Welcome to the second edition of Writer's Corner, and we are very fortunate to have with us two of Minnesota's best. The senior writer of Minnesota Writers, Carl Brookins.
I'm not sure.
And he's not sure whether he's the senior writer or not. And William Kent Krueger.
The neophyte.
The neophyte and New York Times best-selling author. And we have his latest, which is coming out in September, featured right there. And I'm just a pretty face who's going to sit back and turn the floor over to the two of you. And I think people would probably be interested in knowing, since you obviously are a tag team, how long you've been together, how you met, and maybe talk about the crime wave also.
The crime wave, yes.
Sure, so our history goes back, as we were talking a little bit earlier, to 1992 when we both took a How to Write Mystery class at the Loft, taught by the wonderful Mary Logue.
Right.
And we had such a terrific experience in that class.
Well, and that illustrates one of the things that's really good about this part of the world is there are so many really good writing programs here. And the Loft is one of them, an independent writing program in which you can go and learn. You don't learn how to write exactly, but you can learn a variety of things that will make your writing easier and better and will motivate you to write the sort of thing that whatever it is you're interested in writing. And because they cover pretty much the waterfront as far as genres and styles and things like that, you don't have to look for a particular program. You can go to the Loft and look at their lists and talk to their fine people.
And one of the other advantages is that it brings you into contact with like-minded people who are kind of on the same journey that you're on. And in our case, once we finished that class, a bunch of us got together who wanted to continue the reading and critiquing process, and we formed a mystery writers critique group called.
And who named it?
Well, I gave the first iteration of the name, but eventually it became Creme de la Crime. Yeah, and which is still going on.
It's
whatever, 1992. What is that? 30 years later.
Something like
30
that.
years later, it's still going on.
And there's only one member, one of the original members, still in it. Because he won't die. Yeah, that's me. That's correct. That's right. We have a totally different group of people in it now, but it still operates in essentially the same way. It's a critique group. It's not a book reading group. It's a book in which all the in which all the people in it are writing crime novels of one kind or another. A couple of them in the current group, Carol Hoos and John Rogers, are doing really good things. They're all doing really good things, but they're doing quite different things. But they're all in the crime fiction area.
John is going to be on this show in a couple of months, as a matter of fact.
Good. When I'm asked, and I often am asked, how did I develop as a writer? What contributed to that? Without hesitation, I say that the most important element for me in my development as a writer was my critique group.
Blame it all on Creme de la Crime.
Because, Creme de la Crime, you guys never let an easy answer slide.
Right.
We continue to press one another to stretch ourselves, reach a little farther, put out what was absolutely the best thing that we could do.
Yeah, we were persistent with each other, but we were critical of each other's writing. We were not critical of each other. It didn't ever become personal. And I can tell you, as a guest in touring, I have been a guest at some critique groups in which the criticism quickly devolved to criticism of the writer. And that I saw on at least two occasions that brought a writer, a neophyte writer, to tears, and that should never have happened. That's not useful. What was useful was what we did, which was to say, well, you remember in the first chapter you said you set this up in such a way, and now you're changing it. All right, change it if you must, but don't change it in such a way without an explanation. There has to be a progression, or whatever the answer was. And sometimes we agreed with the criticism, sometimes we didn't. But we always were working on the work, on the book, on the output. It had nothing to do with personals.
So our relationship began really with Creme de la Crime.
Right, that's true.
And then I happened to be invited to speak at a class that another mystery writer, Ellen Hart, was teaching at the Loft, how to write mysteries. And after I had spoken to the class, afterward we sat down over a glass of wine and we were talking about, we were kvetching about all of the difficulties of being a published writer, the greatest one of which is how to get your work into readers' hands, promote your work. And it occurred to us that, it would be easier if we were to create a group who contributed their various skills so that nobody had to carry the burden of it,
right.
and promoted our work as a group. And that led to the creation of... That's your cue, Carl.
That's my cue. I see. Well, it's a group that actually...
And it was called...
Ellen thought up. It was called the Minnesota Crime Wave.
The Minnesota Crime Wave.
That's right.
Thank you. Boy, it was like pulling teeth to get you to say that one.
Well, it was like pulling teeth to get the name originally, as you may recall.
Oh, sure. We had a lot of... It took a vat of wine before we figured out the name.
I think it was Ellen Hart who
I think it was Ellen.
Came up with the name, wasn't it? Yeah, we did a series of ads one day there's a television series, and I think you can still find it on YouTube, in which it starts out with a close-up of Kent, and he says, "I'm a liar," and then it cuts to Ellen, and it says, "I'm a liar," and then it cuts to me and says, "I'm a liar too. We're all three liars. We're writers in Minnesota." And then the ad, and that's the end of the ad. It's actually pretty powerful, but it does say in such positive ways what we are and what we're doing.
We lie for money.
We lie for money, that's right.
And we traveled as the Crime Wave for more than a dozen years. We did national tours. We had, as you say, the television show. We published 3 anthologies of short stories by other Minnesota crime writers. It was just a delightful experience and a wonderful collaboration.
More than 1,000 appearances all over the country. Mm-hmm. More than, almost 75,000 miles we traveled.
Don't you find that there's a disproportionate amount of talent in Minnesota, writing-wise?
That has been sort of posited to me, and I think I'm going to disagree with that. I think that there is a disproportionate of talent across the arts in general, and I think that's because of Minnesota. I think Minnesota is a state that long ago committed to supporting the arts here, and it's attracted a lot of talented people to the
I think that's true. I think that's largely the answer. But there is certainly a very strong writing community, and everywhere you go, whether it's Duluth or Fargo or Moorhead, up there on the border. Having worked in both places, in television, I have to.
And so a subset of that is just an enormously strong group of really fine crime writers.
I think that's also true. I think that's true. And you get organizations like the Loft, which is an independent. It's not directly affiliated with any college or university. It just sits out there and teaches people how to be better writers.
With great teachers and available just to anybody, really. And I think that's what spawned this show, is the fact that there are so many great writers, crime writers, although we're going to expand into some other areas because there are other areas that are covered that are really great writers here, anthologies and even poetry. And,
oh, sure.
Yeah. So there's no reason why not.
And there's a very active Sisters in Crime chapter here as well.
Which is open to males, I might add.
Open to males, yes. I'm a sister. Absolutely.
I'm a Mr. in Crime. I'm also a member of Sisters in Crime.
I've got an application sitting on my desk.
Okay, you should join. It's terrific.
We have a good time. We have good times.
You know, Carl, I'm
Yes,
not
sir.
sure that everybody out there who might be watching this is familiar with the enormous amount of output that you're responsible for. You have a number of series.
It's true. I'm writing actually 3 series, since you bring it up. My most recent books are about my short detective. I was introduced in a fog of some sort to a very short man whose name is Sean. That's his first and last name, and if you ask him why he has two identical names, he will tell you that he doesn't know, that his mother never explained to him why his first and last name are the same, S-E-A-N, and he's a private detective. But he's a short private detective. He's barely 5 feet tall. He has a girlfriend, however, who stands 6'2" in her stocking feet. And he has several idiosyncrasies that I fail to understand why he has them or why they came to him or came to me. But he's a really interesting character, and he solves crimes. He carries a very large pistol if he has to, but he rarely uses it because he doesn't like to shoot people. And
he's very funny. He's a very.
Thank you.
The dialogue in those in that series is really terrific.
And one day, I was standing on the street corner in Sandpoint, Idaho, when I'd been visiting my nephew, and I was looking down the street, waiting. I think my wife was in a store, and I was looking down the street, and I realized that almost 90% of the people walking on the street, Saturday morning, a lot of people on the street, 90% of them were white-haired like me. And I thought, you know, it might be interesting to write a series in which the protagonist is an older detective. So he doesn't spend a lot of time in physical things. He doesn't get bopped on the head. He spends a lot of time looking out the window or looking at people going by and thinking on the answers to the puzzles that he has to deal with. And he's former Army intelligence. And his name is Alan Lockham, as in lock 'em up. And he meets a woman. He's doing security for a jewelry show, and he meets a woman who is a former exotic dancer. Now, I have a fairly checkered youth, and I will tell you that I've met a number of exotic dancers in my life. And this woman, however, she's not a prostitute. She's a good dancer. She was also a stripper, and she traveled the world with the USO and other organizations, and she learned a lot in reading and study when the show was not on. And of course, she also learned a good deal about how to assess men in a very fast motion. So when you would meet her initially, within 30 seconds, she would have a pretty accurate picture of who you were and what your background, and whether you were somebody she wanted to know.
And that spawned another series?
And that spawned another series. What I call my Senior Sleuth series.
You also have a love of sailing.
I do. My wife and I have sailed all over the world, and because of that, I wrote a mystery series about various people having problems with law enforcement and with pirates in the modern era and that kind of thing. So I have all sorts of things on my plate.
Now, where did Cork O'Connor come from?
Yeah, I feel like a slacker. I only write one series, the Cork O'Connor series. Been writing that for 30 years. Cork. So Cork O'Connor, here was the seed for Cork. And I love telling this to audiences. Long before I knew I was going to take a class and write a mystery, I just kind of had an idea of a guy I might want to write about. And all I knew about him in those very early days was this. He was going to be the kind of guy who was so resilient that no matter how far life pushed him down, he would always bob back to the surface, and his name would be Cork. Swear to God, that's where it all came from. You know, I told that to an audience not long ago, and some wise guy in the audience said, "Why didn't you just call him Bob?" So that was the beginning of Cork. And then when I decided to set the mystery that I was going to write in northern Minnesota and use the Ojibwe culture as an element of the work, I decided to make Cork a man of mixed heritage, and he became Ojibwe and Irish, and Cork O'Connor was pretty much born.
Now, one of the things about the Cork O'Connor series is we have the mystic Henry, and Henry is ageless but ancient. And I was wondering, as I was reading Fox Creek, does Henry at some point pass on? Because I notice a new character coming in who has a lot of Henry's qualities.
Yeah.
And I was wondering about that. How do you dispose of
You want the author to
main
reveal
character?
the secret of a future book?
Absolutely.
I get emails all the time that go something like this: "Dear Mr. Krueger, you'd better not kill Henry Malou, or else." So Henry's still with us. I have two more books in the Cork O'Connor series under contract. So Henry's going to be with us for at least 2 more books, and then we'll see. I kind of decided a long time ago, Alan, that the book in which Henry takes to the path of souls will probably be the last book in the series, because I can't imagine writing a Cork O'Connor novel without Henry
him.
Malou as the moral compass for the work.
Well, you have several moral compasses in the series, but Henry is unique.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. He's certainly, you know, it's the Cork O'Connor series, but he's certainly readers' favorite characters. And I love writing Henry Malou. He's kind of my favorite character to write in this series.
I, of course, thoroughly enjoy the Cork O'Connor series. That's one of the interesting things about our group, and we'll talk about the Minnesota Crime Wave at some point. But I don't want you to leave out your other novels either.
My standalones?
If you want to call them that, yes.
Well, you know, it's easy to distinguish them from the series by simply saying my standalones. People kind of understand that terminology. So yeah, in 2013, you know, I've had 3 standalones published so far.
Right. 4th
standalone comes out in September. It's called The River We Remember. My first standalone was a political thriller called The Devil's Bed, which I think 4 people in the entire universe bought and read.
I'm one of them.
Oh, thank you.
I loved it. I still think it's one of your best novels.
Well, I thought it was a really good story too, but it wasn't a Cork O'Connor novel,
Right.
and so it sold very poorly. So when I proposed the next standalone to my publisher, they were very reluctant. They basically were not interested. So I wrote that book without a contract and sent it to my editor when it was finished, and even though they didn't want it, they said, "We love this, we'll publish it," and that was Ordinary Grace in 2013. Then in 2019 I published what I consider the companion novel to Ordinary Grace, This Tender Land. And then in September, a 3rd companion novel comes out, The River We Remember. And I think of them all as companions because, unlike the Cork O'Connor series, they're set in southern Minnesota rather than the northern Minnesota of the series. And they all are set in an earlier time. Ordinary Grace was set in the summer of 1961. This Tender Land was in the summer of 1932. And The River We Remember takes place in the summer of 1958.
And I have to say, one of the things that we have mentioned, I also review crime fiction for a number of different sites. Amazon is one of them, but for several other people who have blogs that or columns, and I do freelance reviewing. And the Ordinary Grace book and the other 2, which I have also read, are wonderful stories, and I highly recommend them. I'm looking forward to the next
one. Well, I
one.
read Ordinary Grace as I was writing it to Creme de la Crime, the group,
true.
and you guys critiqued it, and it just got better, so much better as a result of that critiquing.
The critiques are really important.
I agree.
My first novel was over my shoulder here, Holding Court. And David Housewright critiqued the first draft of it. And if I wasn't very stubborn and I really had perseverance, I would have folded my tent right there, because he absolutely destroyed my first draft. It was so helpful to me. His suggestions were so helpful to me. A group is so helpful in that regard.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, if you're going to be in this business, you got to leave your ego at the door.
That's
you got to be
exactly
open
right.
to the positive criticisms that help the work get so much better.
Well, you just can't. I mean, in the beginning, we all learn, right, reading and studying literature and in school about authors who went off and sat in their garrets and wrote, and and handed the finished pages through a hole in the wall to their agent, and all those interesting stories that are probably not true, but nevertheless, and somehow books came out of them. And I guess all those writers of all those books, from Shakespeare and Conan Doyle and people like that, were brilliant people who, whenever they wrote perfect literature, because they apparently didn't have critique groups.
Or
that's a fallacy.
Or right.
They might not have had critique groups, but I'm sure they had
agents
and editors. And
editors.
The editors at your publishing house play such an important part in helping shape the finished piece. I rely on the editorial comments of both my agent and my editor significantly to help make that the best offering we can make it before it goes out there.
I mean, it took Wilkie Collins 10 years to finish and get published The Woman in White. I mean, apart from the fact that I think it's a 785-page or word novel, which is a little long for today's readers, but he struggled with that book. I've read his biography, and Wilkie Collins struggled with that. He wrote other books in between, and it was always just there. And his publishers, and eventually it was published as a serial. I forget who his publisher was, but it was an incredible effort, and now it stands today in that period, pre-20th century, as one of the great novels of the British period.
You know, Carl, you have literally dozens of books out there. I have now currently 22. This will make 23. I don't know about you, but very early on, I thought, okay, when I've written and published 4 books, then I'll know what I'm doing. I'll have a really good sense of security that I'm an author. I know how to do this. I'm still not there.
Exactly. You thought, I'll get several, and I'll know the routines. I'll have it all. It's like my job. It's like the regular job that I used to go to 5 days a week. Those routines were all right there, and I'll be able to do that as a writer. No way.
It doesn't work that way.
Do you have a routine you follow?
Yes. I have a routine now. I thank the pandemic for it, actually. Yeah. That's what really got me started and I always wanted to write a novel. And of course, the second one is about 3/4 of the way done now.
Okay, good.
But, keep it going.
And you have a routine. I have a routine.
I try to write every afternoon for at least 2 hours.
Yeah, I think you have to be disciplined. I don't care if you're an artist, I don't care what your medium is. I think you have to be disciplined in the way you approach your art.
It's not a routine so much as it's a discipline.
A discipline.
You say,
although there are magic. There are certain rituals. I don't know about you guys. Certain rituals that go along with the writing, they kind of help it.
Well, certain days it flows.
Yeah.
Other days, sit there and look at the screen.
I read that Eudora Welty, who was famous for writing at the same time 2 hours every day, in an interview, the interviewer asked her, "So, does the muse always visit you when you sit down to write then?" And her answer was, "No, but I want to be there when she does." So it's not always always easy, but you want to be there.
It makes sense. Because there are the other aspects of being a writer. particularly if that's your job, in a sense that's where your income comes from, and because you have to do other things. You have to tour. You have to deal with publishers, and you have to deal with distributors, and even if you have an agent to do some of that and a publisher to do some of that, if you're not engaged, then you're not engaged, and it doesn't work as well if you're not engaged, which is an unfortunate, in a way it's an unfortunate, because I talk to so many people say, oh, you're a writer, that's great, I want to be a writer, then I can just sit home and write, I don't have to think about anything else.
Everybody wants to be a writer.
Well, yeah, there's an enormous amount of work, not just in sitting down every day to do it, that discipline stuff, but as Carl pointed out, once you become a published writer, then there's just an enormous amount of business stuff that goes along with it. And they don't really talk about that when they're inspiring you to be a writer.
Well, we briefly mentioned that we not only did we go to class together, but we met interesting people, and we continued with Creme de la Crime, but then we also toured together.
And Mary is giving me the signal that we're actually down to our last minute. This has been fascinating.
Good.
Both talking to Carl Brookins and William Kent Krueger. And I would love to have you both back again and continue this, because it's fascinating, and I know it will be fascinating for our viewers also, as well as educational. So I extend that invitation to you, and maybe we can do it again down the road a few months from now. And you have been watching the second episode of Writer's Corner. This is Alan Miller, just sitting here in awe with the talent that surrounds me, and thank you very much for viewing in.